Okay, so what I am doing is trying to fulfill the assets I need for these first 3 frames. And the idea was to have my character walk into this setting and then get surprised, right? So what I'm showing you is the way we're going to animate assets is by always to duplicate them, to do Command J. And then when I want to make a change to an asset, I do it to a duplicate. So a common way is going to be to use Puppet Warp, just like we did to pose our character in Proving Ground 1 in our landscape. And I'm going to make him afraid here. So what do? I pinned his feet. I pin the top of his head. Then I can just stretch him. Maybe I'll pin his hips too, so it's not as extreme. And I'm going to stretch him up like that, right? So he's kind of knocked back. A little jump scare. Now, of course, his expression should change as well. And I don't need it to be super clean. So what I'm going to do is just use my lasso, and I'm just going to draw new pixels. This is the first time we can draw new pixels. I'm going to make a little oval, and I'm going to say Edit, Fill with Black. I can also use the paint bucket, right? But there we go. And then if I want to clean that up a little bit, I can. But this is all going to be at screen resolution. So that I don't get too detailed, I can use the eyeballs to kind of see that change. So what happens with my animation? He comes in, he walks, he gets scared. All right. What else can I do? I'm going to shrink his pupils a little bit here. So flipping back and forth between your last asset that I'm doing with the eyeballs, that's really common in animation. And then doing kind of transformations. So I'm going to Command T, hold down Option, and then shrink those eyes. So they kind of shrink back into his head. Right? But I need to fill up that white space. So I can use the paint bucket, I can use white, and fill up that empty space. Oh, that's black. So now does that work better, right? From this to this. And zooming in like this, that shows me, I really want to take all of these. This is called a movement cycle. And I want to hold them all together. And I want to transform them all, make them bigger. Because again, I want it to be more about the head, right? All right, so now what do we have for my first 3 frames? Character walks in, boom, 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 right? Now, you run those little kind of frame by frames, so you realize, well, when he gets scared, he shouldn't also be stepping and then stepping into being scared. He should kind of jump. So I don't want him to move as much. So it's like he's hitting a wall and then scared. So it goes more like this. Boom, 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 boom. Yes? All right. Now, what's going to scare him? I have it just off screen here. And how can I heighten that? Well, maybe I bring in another asset, or maybe I just draw another asset. I'm going to make it on a new layer. And I'm just going to draw it with the wand, with the lasso rather. I'm just going to draw a little emphasis, right? Like that. So how does that look? I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to draw these little loops. You can also just do it with the paintbrush. And then I'm going to fill them. Edit, Fill. I really like using Edit, Fill because you can just really control things to be super basic. Now, while they're still outlined, or they're on their own layer, right? What if I want them to look a little bit more animated like he is? He has an outline around him. I can double click, get layer styles, and I can turn on the stroke like they were vector shapes. And I can decide how thick I want that stroke outline to be. So black on the outside, how thick. Maybe if I want to smooth it a little bit, I put it on the inside. Just like that. Now this is a separate asset, so this can go, like, be turned on and off. So we're starting to build what are called assets here. So this file, this is no longer assignment 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say File, Save As. I'm going to save it to the desktop with a new name. This is assignment 3, but this is one particular part of assignment 3 that is called the assets file. So I do it all in caps. Karl assignment 3 assets, and then Skeletor. And I'm going to save it to the desktop, and then I'll keep it in assignment 3 as I'm done with it. So your assets file, now you can see it up there. That is where you build just tons of layers. It's your toy box of things to play with that you can move around at will to build your frames. And I often keep them kind of all turned on so I can just see what the movement is, and then if I need something in between, I can do that. The other thing is I can now go to my image size and I can set up what my finished size will be. Right now it's really large. It's almost 10 inches by 10 inches by 350 because my original landscape was really large. I'm going to resample it, and I'm going to make it 8 inches by 8 inches by 100 pixels per inch. Why would I intentionally take quality away? Well, because animation has to play frame by frame. And it should only do that at screen resolution because you can't print an animation. You have to show it on a screen. So if I take up way too much memory, it's going to be a glitchier, slower, harder to load animation. So this is optimized for kind of high-def screens. And you'll notice, though that looks really tiny, I hit Command 0, it still looks really clean. I'd have to zoom in a lot to see those pixels. So this is very much how like a social media video would be done. Now the problem is, it's actually interesting that I showed that. What happened to my stroke size when I changed the resolution? All of a sudden the 16 pixel stroke, those pixels got a lot bigger, right? Because I shrunk all the pixels. But that's what's nice about using these layer styles for things like outlines. They can always be adjusted. All right, what else? I want to keep it simple. So I am not going to change the background as I go. But I am curious what it would look like if I put this rock in the foreground. Now why? Well, using this square now, I'm kind of realizing it would be interesting if something were to pop out here. I have the space. And then it starts to zoom in and he gets really kind of mad at just being in this situation maybe. So there's a few things I can do. If I want this character to grow a little bit, like get a little bit bigger each frame, I now work backwards. So how big do I want him to be here with these effects? I can grab both of them. I can Command T it, and I can grow it, and I can take it to about that size, right? So if he gets bigger, I need to run up to that. So I go with the layer behind and I make it a little bit bigger. And then I go behind and I do Command T and I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller. And then I go to this one, Command T, and a little bit smaller. So now he's going to be not just walking to the side, but walking towards the camera a little bit. So he comes in. And I think I can exaggerate that more. So again, you can go kind of frame by frame. He's getting a little swallowed up by the shadow of the rock. So what do? I modify that asset. Trim that shadow away. There we go. All right, so I can go a little bit bigger with this guy. So it's nice to be able to see your different assets. So if you want to change something like their size, again, this isn't a transformation, this is just movement. But it helps to see what it was before to what it is now, right? And we can always duplicate and add more steps in between as we think we need them. Okay, then these appear. So, how do I set up my first 3 frames? I've got all the assets I need for the first 2. Now this gets a little bit harder because I need to turn this head a little and show I'm looking worried. And I'm thinking he's going to be surprised at something. So I'm adding on to my ideas. And I said I wanted to try to use every asset or every project I've created. So I'm going to open up my assignment 2, my PNG creature, right? And I'm just going to drop that in. And use this as another character, right? So what is the metaphor for this? You know how I like to have real world metaphors. So if you've ever seen stop motion animation, something like The Nightmare Before Christmas by Tim Burton, right? That's a fun one. Then you know that they're all made from models that are then posed and photographed. Now they're not just models. They are puppets with kind of wire skeletons that can be posed. So let's see. My favorite recent stop motion was Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro, 2022. Nope, that's the Disney one. Not that one. That's cursed. It was, I think, the same year, though. And let's look at some GIFs from that to see how they animated it, how they gave the illusion of time passing. Because this is a good way of thinking about what we're doing, which is called frame-by-frame animation. So I'm going to go to Images. Instead of watching YouTube, I'm going to go to Images, go to Type, go to GIFs. And let's just look at a really basic one. It was done for Netflix. All right, so here we have a little character introduction, right, of the wooden puppet, lifeless. And so as Geppetto drops the puppet, it just slumps to the ground. How do they make that more interesting? They zoom in on it. So that looks like any kind of animation, but how can it actually be done? Let's see. We want to see kind of the puppetry behind it. So this is called a stop motion technique. I want to find like a little video. I can't have it already part of the curriculum, otherwise it wouldn't be spontaneous fair use. But I know there are lots of good assets on this. So this is how it works.